So I'm scrolling through videos the other night, and I showed Shannon. I said, "Hey, here's a video you gotta watch," and it was Nora's cooking show. Your daughter Nora, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty new segment around my house, but it's apparently a lot of people tune into it. You know, like when Val posts the stories on Instagram. She asked me the other day if she should create a whole account for Nora, and I was like, "That one's up to you."
How old is she?
Well, she's only 8,
Yeah.
but she's got that personality where she can engage people, and when you watch the stories, you know, you see one clip, this many people, and then you go to the next clip, and whether it's my stories and I'm posting a song, it's like 40, 28, 15. The fall off is pretty steep.
Yeah.
But when you
Same thing with my sermons. They start 3 minutes. It's really good.
I feel your pain.
The activity goes way
I feel
down.
your pain. But with Nora's stories, I mean, the hold is really consistent, and she might lose one or two, but she doesn't really drop off. So I think she might have a future in it. I don't know.
I'm not a cooking show guy, but I hung with it. And I told you, I said, you got to see this. And
Yeah.
she was making some kind of pita pocket or something. It looked pretty good.
It was really good. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's very Mediterranean. Yeah.
So maybe she's got a future in that. But we want to celebrate things going on in the church like that. Let us know. And but Nicole couldn't be a part of the broadcast this week, so we only had 5 birthdays. But again, like, your kids are doing things, you got anniversaries coming up, kids scored a goal in the soccer game, or they started a cooking show at 8 years old. That's the kind of stuff we want to know about. No, we do want to celebrate some birthdays. Maggie James, March the 11th. David Lumpkin, March the 15th. Floyd Pope, also on the 15th. And Eris Williams, also on the 15th. 15th is a popular day to be born, right? Yeah. So, and then Josh Pilcher, his birthday is on the 18th. So happy birthday to all of y'all this week. And, this is an interesting episode. Our theme this month is what's luck got to do with it. Everybody loves your bumper, man. Have you heard from people? I've heard a few people. What are they saying about it?
Well, I tell everybody that cost me $5 and an idea.
Yeah.
At the Dollar Tree, but it seems to have
good.
I don't know if I would say critical acclaim as far as, you know, the reviews and everything, but it's generally positive.
It does around Liberty. It's got critical acclaim here at Liberty.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun with it.
It's one of those you got those strange movies. They call them the cult classics. I think that little bumper might become a cult classic one of these days when people go back and find it. And you doing that.
I'll leave it in the Google Drive for the next generation.
There you go. But anyway, it is about what's luck got to do with it. You're going to hear a pretty amazing story about something God is doing here at Liberty since our last prayer meeting. And Melissa Korn's going to join me to tell that story. And then I got a couple of questions based on the sermon I preached the other day about falling in love with your spouse again and avoiding the damage of divorce. So it's a little bit longer to be able to answer those questions, but I think that it's content that you are interested in. So I think it'll be of interest to you. So here we go, live at Liberty.
What's love got to do with it? What's love got to do with it?
So I know everybody's loving Austin's Leprechaun bumper for this segment, but here in March, we are bringing about these incredible God stories, understanding that it's not luck. And man, we got a really good one for you today. And it involves our favorite staff member, right? We shouldn't say that on camera. Everybody has to get mad. Melissa, yeah, Austin's sitting right there. Right? So, well, just everybody knows, right? So, if Melissa, you have been around. You've not just been on Liberty staff for a long time. You've been around Liberty for a long time. So, just for those who might not know you, tell us who you are and what do you do.
I am. So my name is Melissa. I am 15. So I've been at Liberty since 2009.
Okay.
And so long time on staff since 2012. I'm the preschool director for the whole time as well. And then I'm also the finance secretary. So a lot of behind the scenes stuff is what I do. So
Yeah.
if you wonder how it gets done, I'm how it gets done.
You are your job description is what do I not do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
that is
that's
exactly what my job description
That's
is.
your job description. So tell us about your family real quick.
Married to Joel. We just celebrated 25 years. So we've been married for 25 years. Sophie is in college, and she is 21. She'll be 22 this year. And then prayerfully, Will graduate high school this year. So he'll be 18 this year.
Two of my favorite staff brats. You
Yes.
know, all the staff kids through the years, for me, they're always the staff brats.
Yeah.
It's an exclusive club, and your kids, I enjoy torturing your children, especially Will.
Yes.
So, you got a great family, a lot of fun.
Thank you.
So, man, everybody loves and appreciates everything you do here at Liberty because you do a whole lot of stuff.
I love what I do.
So this what's luck got to do with it, God's story really starts right here with this this little note, and this is so I have inside of my office. Maybe Austin, we can put a picture of this on here. But inside of my office, I have a little prayer closet in there, and when I pray about something, I put it on the board, and it may stay up there for quite a while, but. So we even discovered that this right here, and you and I were talking this morning, makes this, you just can't
Yeah.
deny it. This is not luck. It's of
No.
the Lord. So last week I went to Townsend, right? And I do this every once in a while to just go and pray and meet with the Lord and find out what he wants to do. A year ago, I did the same thing, and I was up there and just really felt compelled by the Lord to pray about the debt of the church. And so this would be March the 13th of 24, which we're recording this on March the 11th of 25. So this is 1 year this week, right, that I wrote this and put it on that prayer board. And it said, over the past few weeks, I have felt compelled to pray for the church debt. Melissa just called and said someone inquired about what it would take to pay it off. And then I put there, Lord, please provide and bring glory to your name. And I always anoint it with oil and put it on that board. But this has been sitting there a year up until this week. And I just went in there this morning and I told you, this is amazing. So it really kind of started a year ago. And then 2 weeks ago, we had our Sunday night prayer meeting. And you came to me that week and was like, hey, I really felt led to do this. So just kind of bring us up to how the Lord is moving in your life and what you brought before the church at the prayer meeting and kind of what happened.
So this probably starts with the budget committee back in October. So we started meeting to prepare, kind of pray over, ask for guidance, putting the 2025 budget together. And, you know, we always focus on, okay, here's our loan payment, like what is our reserve plan. And so but we really felt compelled to start praying specifically for the debt back when we started budget planning. And then for about the last 2 weeks, it's just been a constant, like, in my spirit, like, you know, praying like, okay, Lord, I don't know what you're wanting to do or how you're wanting to do it. I just know that I have to be very intentional right now with how I'm praying about this. And so we were coming up to the prayer meeting, and we've been talking in the budget meeting, our last budget meeting, about like campaigns. Do we want to run a campaign? Do we want to do this? And I just kept getting the thing like, you can't wait. You've got to bring this before the church and pray now. So that's when I came to you and was like, at the prayer meeting, I need to put this on the altar and we need to pray. I didn't have any peace about it till I knew that, hey, this is what the Lord wants and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. So on that Sunday night, you really didn't get up in front of the church and say, hey, here's the plan.
No.
You just kind of said, hey, here's the amount. I think it's what, 1.8 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And really, you just brought before the church, hey, let's just pray about how the Lord might have us to do this, right? you've got some ideas on a campaign, but you didn't. You just like, hey, let's just pray, and that's kind of how we've been the last few years as a church of just let's find out how the Lord wants us to do this. So everybody gets down the altar, and they pray, and the prayer meeting ends. And then what happens after the prayer meeting? So the
prayer meeting ends, and we're walking out, and then the foyer, everyone's talking and fellowshipping before we going down for the meal. And I just had a conversation with someone where it came up like, hey, if we had 12 people give $100,000 and we sell that Fort O campus, that's our 1.8.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and so I'll be honest, like I walked away not like giving that like because I'm like 12 people, like
12 people giving $100,000, like man. That's,
so
yeah,
but yeah.
So then on that Monday, I'm headed to Townsend, right? So I'm going back up there, kind of, and on the way there, I called you just to find out, hey, has anything happened since the prayer meeting? And you started to tell me the story of what you just said. Somebody walked up and said we had 12 people give $100,000 and then sell the Fort O campus. That's our $1.8 million. And I'll be honest. So I hung it up and I hung up the phone. And I'm like, okay, well that's cool that somebody said that, but man, I don't know 12 people that have $100,000. So and so when I heard that, I thought, okay, Lord, that's what we'll pray if that's kind of the first thing that's come from it. And then you called me back, what is it, about
an hour later.
About an hour later.
Yeah.
What happened?
So I'm really protective of Mondays because that's my busy day. But I had been meeting with somebody and I had stepped away to take your phone call. You never call on Mondays. So you know that there's something going on if you call on Mondays. So I'd stepped away and took your phone call, and you had asked, hey, do you have any feedback? And I was like, no, do you have feedback? And anyway, and so I said, hey, but I did have this conversation. So while you're gone, help me pray about this.
Yeah.
I was like, because I prayed about it and I'm just not, I don't know. I don't have clarity. So I asked you to pray about that while you were gone. And when I hung up the phone, like I had turned to go back with who I was with, and you could tell that there was visible emotion on their face. And so immediately I'm like, are you okay? Like, are you okay? And so that person was just like, that amount, that number, I've been praying about that. That number, I have been praying about that exact number.
About the $100,000.
$100,000. Wow. And of course you're just like, whoa, like is okay. Like, and so I just think the whole thing was orchestrated by the Lord. For that person to make that mention of that number in the foyer, for you to call me out of the blue on a Monday, like for me to just even remember that story, to ask you to pray about it, the whole thing, you look back down, it's divine intervention about how the Lord just lined it up. Because they made the comment, that was a confirmation of what they had been praying about.
They had been praying about giving $100,000 to the church, but didn't know what to give it to, right?
Right.
And here's the other interesting thing about this. So we're not going to, obviously give anything away, but when you took my phone call, you said out of the room where
I was in a hallway.
Were meeting, and this person doesn't have great hearing, right?
Right.
So, but they heard me talking to you on the phone and you talking back to me about what you were saying. They heard that very clearly, and you walked back in the room and there were visible tears.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
So you told me that, and obviously I was praying all week, last week while I was in Townsend. But what's kind of happened since then?
I have shared this story. I've had some people just like come by for something out of just regular business stuff. Anyway, I've shared that story twice with people, and I've had 2 more confirmations of people where I had one confirmation of someone who was praying that night during the prayer meeting and said that was the number that was on my heart that night. And I had shared 100,000. And I had shared it with 2 other people there at the prayer meeting. And then just yesterday, I was sharing this story with someone, and it was just like, wow,
Yeah.
that they had something going on in their life where they were going to be in the position to where they could be $100,000 giver. And
Wow.
it's just like, I have no words. Like, it's
Yeah.
just, the Lord's amazing.
He knew, right?
Yeah.
When he put this on your heart.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times the Lord puts stuff on our hearts so that we'll start to pray about it, so everybody will tune in to see
Yeah.
what he does,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. And then, just in our conversations together about this, you've talked about just kind of how this has impacted your own faith. Just
yeah.
kind of how's this stirred your own heart?
So in my prayer life, like, it has made me realize, just like you say, when we're going to surrender all to the Lord, I haven't been surrendering all in my prayers. Like,
Yeah.
I have been praying about things, but then I still have the pinch on what the result I want, because it's in my hands.
Yeah.
And I told you this yesterday, I have never had the strong feeling like I do now of telling this story about how the Lord wants us to pray about something for his glory like I do now. But the intentionality of my prayer life, like even in our personal life, since then, we've been praying about this one thing for 6 months in our home. And then, I took that same intentionality of like, it's out of my hands, Lord, this is yours. And I'm going to trust you, whether it's what I want or not. And we had an answered prayer in our house last week. Like, it's just the whole, like, it's not about me. Like, you say love the Lord with your heart, your mind, your spirit, but you need to pray that way too. Like, you need to pray that you're full of faith, that you're full of trust, and that you just give it all to him. And, one thing I took out of experiencing God was that God's always working. Look for it and then join it. And that, the Lord's always working, but like, sometimes you're like, oh man, I want to be a part of that. Like, but I don't ever see anywhere, like, I see him working, but like, where do I jump in at? But like, this has been one of those things where I don't have $100,000 in my bank account,
right.
but I know I want to be part of this.
Yeah.
And like, me and Joel sat down yesterday and even was like, we need to sacrifice. I want to be a part of what is going on, because the Lord has called me to pray about this, and I want to be a part of it.
Yeah. It made me start praying last week. Hey, Lord, I don't have $100,000, but if you'll send it, we'll give it, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And Shannon may watch this and go, what now? But you do want to be a part of what the Lord's doing, right? So, and I think sometimes in hearing that, it increases our faith, because I know you said when the person came to you about the 12 that they got the number, there's 12 apostles, there's 12 tribes,
right.
And then it calculates out with the Ford O sale and all that kind of stuff. And but I hear that and I'm thinking, I don't even know if there's one person in the church that give $100,000.
Yeah.
And in the last few days, you've had 3 that have come forward to just not give it yet. You've got one check is there, but just people saying, "Hey, we've been praying about that too," which is pretty awesome. So, just kind of going forward, what do you feel impressed in your spirit about maybe what you're praying for, looking for, of how this plays out until it's paid off? Because I believe the Lord's going to answer this prayer. So
I had completely forgotten about that. And that just confirms even more for me after going back and revisiting that. But like right now, I'm just feeling I'm feeling like I'm praying for the givers. And I don't know when it was, but you said in a staff meeting, then we carried it to a prayer meeting, maybe what we should be praying for are the people who are giving.
Yeah.
And so when I got the actual check in hand yesterday, that's our seed. And it was just a very powerful time just to even get to pray over that seed of, Lord, what you could do with this first $100,000. And so, it gave me a chance to pray for the giver, pray for them, pray for their life, pray for it just to ripple out, for this to become contagious.
Yeah.
So, and it's all for his glory. story. So, but my prayer right now is just for the givers, for hearts, for this contagious spirit just to flood our church.
Man, I forgot about that. So I'll give everybody the backstory on that one. So this would have been back in the fall, right? And we were praying about, you're always kind of behind the budget and you're trying to figure it out. And always the solution is we need more givers. And I was fasting that day and just asking the Lord, give us a solution. What do we need to pray for?
Yeah.
To make up the giving. You know what? Now I think about it, our giving has increased a lot since this happened. And I found there were 4 passages. I can't remember what all. One of them was about Daniel and how, those young men who gave themselves to the Lord blessed them and gave them favor, and because they didn't take the king's portion, the Lord just blessed them, and so that obedience, the Lord blessed that obedience, and then obviously it's the passage about the joyous, generous hearts giving, and then the one about pressed down and shaken together, the Lord would increase it. And I told the staff, this was on a Thursday, I told the staff, I said, we need to pray for more people to give, but we need to pray for the givers, that the Lord would increase the givers so that those who don't have the faith to give can see what the Lord does. And man, so you just brought that up, and look what's happening, so that's pretty cool. Yeah. But yeah, it's neat to see what the Lord is doing, and hey, luck has nothing to do with that.
Absolutely not. Prayer has everything to do with that.
And then just finding this one year ago this week, that was written right there. That's just further confirmation. Well,
I know. I just stand in awe. I have no words. I keep saying this to you, but I have no words. I'm just in awe. It's just amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just excited to be able to share the story.
Pretty awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate your leadership, your friendship, being
Absolutely.
the favorite staff member and the whole thing. Austin, don't take it personally. but hey, everybody knows you do a lot around here, and it's awesome to see how the Lord's using you now in this season. So we do appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So had a couple of questions that were sent in from the sermon on Sunday. So I'm going to take some time to answer those, but appreciate Melissa being on this episode because luck's got nothing to do with it. It's one of those great God stories. So on Sunday, brought up the topic out of Matthew chapter 19 of how do you fall in love again, talking about God's design for marriage. And the context of that passage is that Jesus, in answering a question about the damage of divorce, he points to the design of marriage. And I kind of put it out there. If you have a question from this message, let me know. And by the way, in the comments, we'll share. You can send Nicole anything you want to celebrate on the podcast, birthday, anniversary, something great that you accomplished in your life or your children are involved in. You can send a story to Lori that we can get on the podcast, and then obviously you can ask questions. And so got a couple of questions from that message, and so I wanted to take a few moments and answer those. The first one was, do you biblically believe God will bless a new relationship that is the product of an affair that caused a divorce? So first of all, I'm going to give you my understanding of that question. What I think the person is asking is this. There was an affair that caused a divorce, and my understanding is now that affair has produced a new relationship or a new marriage, and will God bless that new relationship? So if by the word bless, the person means that God will affirm that marriage, then the Bible makes it very clear that affair is sinful and that the new marriage is created in the context of adultery. So I would have to say no, that God will not bless that marriage in that way of condoning it or affirming it, because the Bible makes it very clear about that. If the question is, are there any blessings that could be in the future for that couple, I would answer that question like this. I think that there are going to be definite consequences to suffer. Sin always has pleasure for a season, but it also brings about consequences. It's kind of the reap and sow sort of thing. You reap what you sow, and so in the beginning, I would say that the new couple may experience pleasure, they may experience happiness. It's a new beginning, and that's always has a sense of excitement for people as they think about the possibility. But my caution would be that after that marriage grows and begins to mature, I think some of the things that caused the one marriage to end could come into play in this one. I mean, obviously, there would be a trust factor that you would have to work through of hey, if we've done this before, what would keep us from doing this again? Especially in because in any marriage, there's hard times and there's hard seasons and difficult things. And so I would think that would have to play in your mind. And so I think that in the new relationship, you're going to have to deal with some of the things that are in each of you that caused the situation to be as it is. Are there blessings to be had? I would say yes. God gives common grace to all and His mercy to all. Listen, I know this is a marriage that you're talking about began with an affair. If you really looked at it, every marriage begins with two sinners. I mean, we're all sinful people. But God gives that common grace so that we might return to the Lord. And so that's why He doesn't destroy any of us for the sin that we would commit. I would say maybe the new couple repents. They have a serious relationship with the Lord that they begin. The Bible has some interesting passages about divorcing and marrying and divorcing and returning to that marriage. The Bible is one of those passages would be Deuteronomy chapter 24. It says that kind of just creates confusion. So my advice would be kind of like 1 Corinthians 7 says, stay in the state that you're in. You are where you are, and so you need to turn to the Lord and begin to honor the Lord in the situation that you're in instead of creating more confusion in what's going on. But I'll share an interesting story about blessing, and it's a very different kind of a circumstance, but I think it applies to this in a way. So when my father was drafted to fight in Vietnam. And when he was drafted into the U.S. Army, he was married. And while he was there, I didn't learn this until I was about 15 years old. But while he was there, his wife had an affair and cheated on him. And it ended the marriage. And then my dad met my mother, and they had almost 50 years of a wonderful marriage. My father since passed away. And here I am. What a blessing that is, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like, remember Marty McFly in Back to the Future where he's disappearing? If you go back through that scenario, if I would not say that it was a blessing that sin caused my father's marriage to end, but I'd almost be kind of like Marty McFly disappearing right before your eyes if we rewrote that story in a different way. But, God is good. Life can be bad and people can be bad, but God is good. And so are there blessings to be had? I would say yes, there are blessings to be had, especially if now you turn to the Lord and do the things that He's calling you to do. So, interesting question there. Question number 2. On Sunday, I talked about how the priority of a man's needs and becoming one flesh and the priority of a woman's needs and becoming one flesh are almost inverted. I'd put it like this. A man puts a priority on Ephesians chapter 5, having respect from his wife. And then the physical needs for a man are a big part of becoming one flesh, and then the spiritual, emotional needs are a part of that. Well, for the woman, it's the opposite. Love is her priority. And then above the physical need would be the emotional, spiritual need, and then comes the physical. And so what that does in a relationship is it forces humility and self-sacrifice, in that God created man and woman equal, but we're not created the same. And so I believe the way God wired us brings in that sanctification process of not just trying to be happy in a marriage, but trying to be holy in a marriage and growing together in our oneness of the Lord. And so the question is, well, what if your husband doesn't seem to be interested in the physical aspect of marriage? And man, that's an unfortunate question. And I would point to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 1 through 5 as a guide for this, and I'll read it to you. It says, now concerning the matters about which you wrote, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. But because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. A couple of principles I would pull from that as a way to answer that question is, one, the woman is to give her body to her husband for pleasure and connection, and vice versa. The husband is to give his body to his wife. And so that also implies communication. There ought to be communication in a marriage. Hey, these are the things that I find pleasurable. What are the things that you find pleasurable? And there ought to be, in the physical aspect of a marriage, there should never be the sense of, I'm going to get what I want, and you shouldn't withhold that. That's not what the passage is teaching. It's teaching that oneness of loving one another, exploring one another, getting to know one another, and bringing those things about in the physical relationship. And that is to be a very pleasurable part of the marriage. If one is depriving the other, again, based on the passage, it ought to be agreed upon. And notice that in the passage it says for a limited amount of time. Not only should there be agreement, this is why we're not going to be intimately involved. Maybe it's something going on with the body. Maybe it's some other things that are happening. But also, it's not always going to be like this. There's a limit on this. So there should be communication about that. And the passage says concentration on spiritual things. Maybe you say, hey, we're going to concentrate on our prayer life, or maybe there's a fasting aspect to it. And so that's kind of what the passage is pointing at. And so my next question then would be, if the husband is withholding himself, how's his prayer life? Is it growing? Is his relationship with the Lord getting stronger? Has he talked to you about that maybe there's a reason why he's not giving himself to you, but he's concentrating on some things in the Lord? And so you have to ask, are y'all becoming more devoted in prayer? Based on the question, it doesn't sound like that's the motivation of what's going on. And so the last thing you have to bring into this, which is not good, is that the passage brings up a temptation factor. As we become one flesh, that physical relationship, if it's not there, that part of it is a real cause for concern. And I think that's why this question is being asked. I think this is a question of a very concerned wife, of why isn't this happening? Because it's not natural, it's not normal, it doesn't sound like it's enhancing the spiritual life. And so, I hate to put it, but you have to ask the question, are they giving themselves to temptation? What's interesting about this, so the first church I started pastoring in 1996. So next year will be 30 years, 3 decades that I've been a pastor. I was a youth pastor 5 years before that. So I've been in ministry in 4 decades. So I'm old, right? So early on in our ministry, Shannon and I would spend a lot of time counseling young couples and talking to young couples either before marriage or after marriage. And it seemed like the conversation was more at that time of helping to helping young married girls understand why their husbands wanted the physical part of the relationship so much, and helping the young men to understand, hey, that's not her priority, but here's the way to her heart, and this is the way y'all build that intimacy. The guys have got to work on the emotional connection and the spiritual connection, and the girls had to work on the physical connection. And that seemed like 30 years ago, that was kind of our concentration. And it seems like over about the last 5, 8, 10 years, and Shannon and I have had a lot of conversations about this, it's been surprising how that's changed. We have more and more women who now come to us and talk about how this very problem is happening, where a husband is not physically, intimately involved in his wife. And so it would be a couple of things. Either, one, there's something physically wrong that's going on there, maybe with his body, medically, that needs to be checked out, or the temptation thing has to be explored. Is there adultery that's happening? Is the reason why that's taking place, or is pornography a factor in what's going on in the relationship? And if you just do some cursory reading of a lot of things that are being written now, there is a factor of impotence amongst young men that's happening because of addiction to pornography. And so that is just a tragic, horrible conclusion to bring to that. And I'm not saying, hey, that's what's going on, but based on the passage, there needs to be communication. If one's withholding from another, you need to understand the point of marriage is the physical part is a really important part of the marriage, and a husband needs to understand that his wife, I wasn't saying on Sunday that she doesn't have those needs, but he needs to understand physically how to connect with her, and emotionally how to connect with her. If that's not happening, it needs to be communicated for it agreed about a limited amount of time. And then if it's not happening, he says the danger is temptation. So you have to ask that question. So I want to end on a good note, and the good note is I wasn't given a question, but somebody wrote in a testimony, and it's a great testimony. And I don't know exactly who this would be. I would think it could be one of 2 or 3 couples that we've counseled through the years. But hey, I'll just read this to you so you can get it from their own words. But if this is one of those 2 or 3 situations I'm talking about, or the stories I'm reading from, I'm going to tell you, this was a really bad situation. But listen to this. It says, this is not a question, but a testimony on divorce. Early in our marriage, there were some hurt feelings and seriously broken trust. To spare the details, I was ready for divorce. We committed to counseling, and I'll never forget the words Brian said to me. Tell me what your marriage was like before this. It was easy to explain all the ways we loved each other and all the ways that our marriage had been successful up to this point. Then he asked, why would you throw away a whole marriage for a bad day? I would even ask, why would you throw away a marriage for a bad season? And that was the first moment in many days I'd considered that divorce wasn't the right path for us. After many prayers and many days, weeks, months, understand that it takes a long time, working on ourselves individually, spiritually, and as a couple, my husband found God in our pain. He was saved and baptized shortly after. Nearly 10 years ago, I almost ended a whole lifetime of marriage for one bad day. I've never once regretted that decision. We have a beautiful life and a beautiful family, and none of this would have been possible without the Lord saving my heart through those words. Just because society tells us that we should make decisions in our marriage based on what others think, we are proof that God's plan is superior to all others, no matter how difficult it may seem at the time. I got that the other night. Shannon and I were kind of getting ready for bed, and I just kind of handed her a phone. I said, hey, read this. And she read through it. And, man, it's so encouraging to get things like that because you hear the bad things, but, man, you love to hear these stories of 10 years later, kind of what the Lord's done. You know, and Shannon brought up something interesting to me, that there are studies that show that marriages can be in really bad places, about to divorce, about to do it in, about to commit adultery, like we talked about earlier. But the studies also show that those couples that do, like this says, that hard work, days, months, years, right, of committing themselves, finding the Lord in the pain, she said that study shows that those marriages become just exponentially stronger and become very healthy marriages later on after they've worked through a situation like this. So that's a great testimony, and I think it's a good note to end on. So, hey, we love you watching Live at Liberty. Hope you're enjoying the content. I know today's a longer one, but I think these are important things to answer because they're things that you're sending us. So, again, send me your questions. We'll give you the link to that. You can send me questions. You can send Lori some stories. You can even send Nicole some things to celebrate going on in your life. But thank you for being a part and watching Live at Liberty.